Thank you for joining us today and the EIX, or Entrepreneur and Innovation Exchange interview. EIX is an online portal and resource for aspiring entrepreneurs, students, existing entrepreneurs, and professors. We provide a whole range of content, case studies, best practices, and of course my favorite, which is the interview where you actually get to meet a local and successful entrepreneur. My name is Dave Feldman. I am an entrepreneur. I helped set up a green business incubator, the first on the East Coast, a speaker, and I work in the area of sustainability and economic development. Thank you for joining us today. I'm here today with Marnie Abramson, who is a leading expert in the area of green building. She's a partner in the Tower Companies, an organization that does both commercial and residential apartment buildings, all sustainable, as well as the founder of a group called the Real Estate Executive Education, which is a nonprofit about educating folks on good real estate practices. And most recently, she started a business called NextGen Partners, all about sustainable, efficient energy lighting, LED lighting. So welcome, Marnie Abramson.
Thank you.
Marnie, it's so good to be here with you again. We've had an opportunity to work together. We've actually, one of the organizations I've been partners in, had an event in one of the greenest buildings, I want to say Montgomery County, maybe
Yes.
State of Maryland.
Yes, we tried to call it the healthiest building ever built. I don't know if that's still true, but.
So today we're looking to talk about entrepreneurship. And we want to talk about being in business, and your area of expertise is building, green building particularly. And since we're talking about the sustainable entrepreneur, we want to talk about what makes a sustainable entrepreneur, but also what kind of things that you've done in helping, or to grow as far as becoming a successful entrepreneur yourself. So the first question, before we talk about the things that you do, let's talk a little bit about you. When did you realize that you were an entrepreneur?
That's a great question. Probably early on. I did have a newspaper that I started in my neighborhood. Well, actually,
that's truly early in your life.
My next door neighbor used to pay me 10 cents to weed her lawn, okay? 10 cents an hour, which even then I don't think was a very fair wage. So I decided I was going to start a newspaper in my neighborhood and I was going to sell it for 10 cents. I hand wrote them, full color, was really nice. Walked around and I sold them to people, and I started to get a sense that I could make a lot more money selling the newspapers than I could weeding. So a little bit about time value of money. All of a sudden I could buy my own ice creams from the ice cream man, and I think that was probably the hook for me. It was very early, probably about 6 or 7.
So from there, what made you decide to choose that as a career, that or make some big decisions about staying involved in entrepreneurship?
It's interesting because my family has a family business in real estate development, and even though by the time I realized I had a family business, it wasn't a startup company, I grew up in an environment where work and family was sort of intertwined, and I never had any sense that there were limitations about the office or about what you could do. And I think that was really helpful for me when I was growing up. So I had a lot of interests, I never felt limited, and it took me on a very sort of crooked path. I think when you look back at my career now, it feels like it all makes sense. It feels very linear. But the truth is, when I started school, I went to University of Colorado. I dropped out, and I wanted to be a cocktail waitress in Ireland. But I decided I would be a reporter anyway in San Diego. So I did that for a year. Then I moved back to Washington, D.C. I went back to business school, left again to move to California, and got a job at a talent agency and finished night school, right? So I did a lot of jumping around and moving.
So you knew business was what you wanted to be, and you just weren't sure of what aspect of it. You kind of were
exactly
swimming around trying to find the right fit.
Yeah, and in fact, it was my grandfather who had called me when I was out in California and said, you gotta button up. You gotta get your act together and figure something out that you wanna do. And so I ended up getting a job in investment banking, which was very strange and felt foreign to me. But they really convinced me that I needed to go to business school. So if I wanted to be serious about business, I had to go to graduate school. And so I did. I got accepted and went to graduate school. And 3 months into my graduate program, I actually dropped out to start a company. So I met a guy who was on my team. He was a produce exporter. He had an idea. We wrote a business plan. And I actually left school without finishing my first semester of finals. We went through, it was a really interesting time. It was the late 90s, raised a bunch of money in the public markets, raised a bunch of money in the private markets, and ended up going out of business about 18 months into the endeavor.
And what kind of business was this?
This was actually a produce exporting business, so we were utilizing new technology, actually video technology, which at the time in the late 90s was not so ubiquitous. You know, it was very hard to get on the internet and do videos. But we were showing people, growers on the west coast of the United States, introducing them into new markets, basically in Asia, to try to get better pricing for them for their products. There was a lot of consolidation in the industry over here. And so that was a really interesting experience for me for lots of reasons, you know, because we were raising public money and because ultimately it failed, right? We just spent more than we took in, which was a pretty common story at that time. But I had no plan for failure, right? At that point, I had not anticipated that. And I had left business school like I was, you know, I was going off to war, I was the hero, and I had no idea what to do afterwards. And so I ended up going back to business school, which I think for me was a critical decision, because it felt a lot like putting my tail between my legs and sort of crawling back and saying, well, I didn't know as much as I thought I had, and you know, and I guess I need to kind of be back here where everybody else is. And so finished that degree, and it wasn't until I finished that my family had said to me, why don't you come back home? My father had gotten sick, and come work for the family business. We're interested in getting into sustainability. You're young, you're creative, let's see if you can help us out. And so I did. And so it was a very kind of crooked path that really led me into sustainability, into my family business. I think the entrepreneurship had already been there, but this willingness to kind of take on a new endeavor, a new enterprise, even within an existing business.
Yeah, there's so much that you said in that statement. I had so many questions. I want to go back to the failure part.
Okay.
And I think that's really interesting, because at an early age you went through something, you had an expectation you were going to grow a business, and it didn't work out as planned. So, you know, what did you learn from that? Obviously you went back to business school, so in some respects you said, I still want to continue down this path.
Yeah.
But what was it that happened? What went through your head after you went through that process?
It took me a lot of years, actually, to process that failure. I think for a long time I was just ashamed. You know, I just felt like I really blew it, and I had disappointed so many people, and but I realized that I didn't really know what I was doing, right? I had an idea, and it was a very good idea, if I say so myself, and a lot of the market has sort of transitioned that way anyway. But I was in no position to lead that change. I just didn't know enough about management. I didn't know enough about financial management. I didn't know enough about the industry that I was working in. And my business partner had, you know, he was a produce exporter. He knew a lot about that. But we were young, we were inexperienced, we didn't know how to hire people with experience, we didn't know what we were looking for there. We signed contracts that we shouldn't have signed because we weren't able to assess kind of the viability. And we had advisors and all of those kinds of things, but you know, it's a major undertaking running a business and taking responsibility for other people's cash and making responsible choices and investments, and we made bad choices. You know, we made some good choices too, but not enough.
So you went back to business school and you said, okay, I need to learn more. I want to understand just the technical aspects of business together.
Yeah.
Did you get that from business? And what did business teach you that you didn't have prior to starting your early business?
So it's really funny because this is an easy question to answer. The only thing, and no disrespect to anybody who's teaching in business school, but the best thing that I got out of business school was feeling that I could learn anything. Because when you go into business school, it's not like college where everybody's learning and you get a grade based on your individual performance, right? You're graded based on how you stack up vis-a-vis everybody else in your group. So if I'm taking accounting with people that had studied accounting in school, it's significantly more difficult for me to get the grades that I need to get in order to be not on probation or whatever it is, right? So I came from more of an arts background. My undergraduate degree was in broadcast journalism. And so going to business school for me was a challenge. The classes were a challenge. And being able to tackle that, I think, gave me the confidence back that I needed after we had gone out of business. So that, for me, getting my confidence back, I think, was the most critical part of business school.
So you left school, you finished, and you had this renewed vigor to go out and tackle the world. You had the skills that you were looking for. Give us a timeline of how things progressed in your world. What did you do next? What did you learn next? And how has it evolved to where you are right now, which is quite exciting place?
I went to work for my family. We had one gentleman who was our head of sustainability at the time, and I basically went to work under him. They had an idea that they wanted to calculate the benefits of being inside of a healthy building based on a per square foot basis. People do that a lot today, but not so much when I had first started with them. And so I had come from a background in investment banking. I had a fresh, newly minted degree in business. And so I spent about 6 months working on a proposal that we could take out into the market that says, these are the benefits, the hard and soft benefits of being inside of green buildings, and this is why you should lease inside of a tower company's building, right? At the bottom line, it was really kind of a pitch, but it was something fundamentally that we believed in, and it was a way of approaching the market that we felt other people weren't looking at, and that if we could only sort of reposition the way that they were evaluating their business decisions, that we might be able to move them closer into alignment with a more kind of holistic approach to business and sustainability and profitability and what those things meant. So it took me about 6 months to put that together, and then I probably spent, I'm not joking, the next 6 years doing some variation of that discussion with people. It evolved over time, and people were more receptive to the message over time. In the beginning, it was like, she's crazy. You know what I mean? And I would get some big laughs.
Which probably just fired you up
yeah,
even
exactly.
more, knowing
I loved
you.
it. I thought, all right, it's fine. I believed in what I was doing, right? I believed in the math.
Yeah.
I believed in the science behind it. And that made it very easy for me to continue to go out and talk to people. Over time, there were many other businesses that developed around sustainability that helped reinforce the message, right, that we were sending. Very innovative companies too, like Interface Carpets was, coming
Wonderful
around
company.
into being, right. People were doing renewable energy credits, and people were starting to look at business and sustainability and operating expenses much differently. And so that period of time, I think maybe I was there with tower companies for 8 or maybe almost 10 years, but I was able to gain a platform for myself, right? Educating people. I love the idea of teaching people. I love learning a new skill and then passing that on to somebody else, and then seeing how that kind of ripples through the market. And I had the opportunity to do that, and I think that, most importantly, was what gave me credibility ultimately when I decided to go out and start my business, that I had 10 years, right, of experience. I had gone through many different facets of sustainability. I had done the research. I had spoken to the people in the market. I understood what their concerns were, and I was able to build a business understanding what clients were looking for, and not sort of this idea that I had that I thought you needed, right? You should do this because it's good for you. No, you're going to do something if it's good for your business. And understanding that and coming from that kind of business perspective, I think, really helped me.
Right, and I like that you have a good understanding of that. It is about the business, but you also had this underlying, you can call it a social mission, you can
Right.
call it sustainability. You had a bigger vision of what you could be doing as far as a change agent, as what your business would be focusing on.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because when I first went out and started talking to people, I have a business partner in NextGen LED, which is my company today, a part of NextGen Partners. And he comes from the financial world. And people would say to him, I can't believe you're partnering with Marnie. She's a green girl, right? And not that kind of green. She's like the sustainability girl.
Right.
Are you sure, she's the business, she's got the business acumen that you're looking for. And I think there was actually it took people a while to understand or maybe accept that I could look at the market from lots of different ways, right? And sustainability to me means that it's financially sustainable, that it's a profitable endeavor, because if it's not profitable, it's not sustainable.
That's great, because when you talk about the name of this series is The Sustainable Entrepreneur, and when most people think about sustainability and entrepreneurship, they always think about being financially viable.
Right.
But sustainability is a big word with many different meanings to it, and you've obviously brought in a whole different idea and concept around green building, and you were able to differentiate yourself. Talk a little bit about how you use sustainability as an opportunity to grow your business. In some ways, you talk about it from a competitive advantage. You were one of the first into this space. And many entrepreneurs, when they go into a business, it may not be around sustainability, but they're introducing a new concept of some sort.
Right.
So you were potentially ahead of the curve. You were certainly saw this as an opportunity. And the tower companies, I know, has done a lot of green buildings way before it was fashionable. So how do you kind of reconcile the sustainability from only being financial to being a core part of your business?
Well, that is probably the greatest challenge. And I think that in the beginning, at least when I was with the tower companies, we led with the notion that sustainability was good for you, good for us, good for the planet. And that was fine, maybe with a company that had been around for 70 years. When you get into a startup endeavor and you are seeking clients and you are seeking kind of space within the market, it really started out primarily as a financial discussion. We are an operating expense cost reduction company, right? And these are the benefits that you're going to get in addition to that. So many people today have corporate social responsibility initiatives, but they don't think about that in terms of, they think of it oftentimes as a marketing tool, but not as a fundamental business practice. And so what we try to do when we go in with our proposals, which is very different even today than what we tend to see with other companies, is the first page is your financials. Okay, here's your cost, here's your return on investment, here's your NPV, here's your ROI, and the next page is here's your environmental benefit. Right? Here is the equivalent of what you are removing, right? Here are the trees that you're saving, here's the CO2 that you're offsetting. And they kind of go side by side, but one is page one and one is page two, because if this looks good, then the next page feels great.
And if they don't get past page one, they'll never get to page two.
Exactly.
So you need to show that, that value proposition.
Exactly. And then what we've done for people is, as we've gone through, we're now finishing up our third year in business, so we have basically a report card that we deliver to our clients. So if you've done projects with us over the course of those 3 years, we've tracked not only the energy savings for you, but also your environmental savings. In case they forget, right? You're doing all of these things. You should feel good about this. You should let people know you are responsible for bringing this positive change. Your business decision has enabled your company to, produce these kinds of savings. So it's not something that we've done. It's something that you've done as a business owner.
Right, that's great. So, and I love the sustainability angle too. I think it's really important. I want to go in a little bit of a different direction right now. You mentioned earlier that you were mentored or encouraged by your grandfather.
Yes.
And you have a business partner right now. No entrepreneur can build a business on their own. It takes a team. It takes a lot of folks to be, part of that. And if you're doing real well, and you mentioned earlier when we were having a conversation that you're almost out of your comfort zone right now because your business has grown to a point where you're growing. Who have been the mentors in your life who have led you, and what have they taught you? And even adding on to that, what do you look for in a mentor? What is somebody who can guide you through that process as you're growing your business?
Those are great questions.
Thank you.
So I've had a number of mentors, and it's funny because I didn't always approach these people as, will you mentor me, right? But they were people that I had come across in business that I had identified as either being respected, somebody that I had seen something where I've learned something, and then I sought them out. It's interesting, my business partner and I actually met that very same way, because I had been doing some consulting work for a company, and I was not a big fan of that company. I was sort of on my way out. He came in to evaluate on behalf of a potential investor, and we met on the other side of the table. So we had exchanged business cards, and I said to him, let's keep in touch. And I called him and I started showing him other business ideas that I was looking at. Actually, it was his idea ultimately that led us into the LED business. But his skill set and his ability to evaluate businesses in a way that was vastly different from mine was what led me to kind of partner together with him. And so, in that sense, I would call him a mentor, even though he is my partner, right? We learn
Absolutely.
from each other, for sure. There was a woman, when I had started at the tower companies, she was actually hired to be our PR agent. She was a few years older than me, and very successful businesswoman, a hustler, right? Somebody that had to work for everything that she had gotten in business, and really kind of took me under her wing, literally and figuratively. So when I first started, she would walk me through rooms and introduce me to people. She would coach me through discussions like this. Afterwards, she would say, you know, you got to sit up straight. You have to articulate better. You need to repeat the question that somebody's asking you if you're in the middle of an interview. I mean, really kind of specific tactical things that I've been able to take with me through time. And I've tried to turn that around too, and become a mentor or develop friendships with younger people who are looking for the same kinds of things. My grandfather was certainly a mentor. I mean, when I worked at the company, he used to bring me into his office every day. We would have lunch together, right? What are you working on? What are you doing? He would ask me what I thought about things. He would tell me straight up if he thought I was crazy, if he thought my ideas were bad, if they were poorly thought out. I mean, he was...
So one of the key things a mentor does is they're honest. They're giving they're giving you feedback
That's
about
right.
what you're doing right and pushing you in the right kind of direction.
That's right.
So another area which is somewhat mentors, but it's a little different, is partners and teamwork. Your team that you're building up as you're going through that. Going to NextGen Partners, I'd like to talk a little bit about NextGen, what you're doing with that, and a little bit of the evolution of that organization. But it has grown. It says, I think you told me earlier that it doubled 2 consecutive years, so it's
Yes.
quadrupled. And you're learning a lot right now, and you're getting in areas that you've never been in before. And having a good, strong team will be very important to getting to the next level, because you can't do it all on your own.
Right.
Talk a little bit about your growth with your partnerships, your team. What do you look for? What do you expect from your team? You know, they're obviously a vital part of your growth.
They are a vital part, and how I've selected the team has changed over time. You know, when I first started, it was just my business partner and myself. We brought on one key person, and we really sort of had an idea, and we started it very small because we were afraid. We didn't know so much about the technology, and as we were able to successfully implement things, then we looked for people that had specific skill sets in the industry and or from outside of the industry that resonated with us, both in terms of their skill set, but also in terms of their values, right? Values-based organizations, for me, are very important. Some people think it doesn't matter at all, and people just come in and they do a task, but I think that how people interact with each other and how you communicate is one of the biggest areas for success or failure in a company.
And how is that different from a business that might not be values-based? I mean, I think all businesses have values, but there's something different when you have a clear set of, you know, when it's part of your mission.
Right, right. That's true. I think, well, in particular, because you have no, I mean, I'm the compass, right? There's no organization that's kind of propping you up. There's no existing business that's there. You're literally cutting through the forest and finding your way through. So if you are not all on the same page together in terms of what it is that we're trying to accomplish, how do we present the business to clients, right? How do we represent ourselves? What directions do we want to take for growth? Who do we want to partner with? Who are the organizations that we feel best reflect the brand that we want to develop, right? So those are the kinds of questions that you have to ask, and they sound simple in retrospect, right? But they're not simple at all. And so here's an example. NextGen LED, we are a lighting retrofit company, and I had done some lighting retrofits, obviously, throughout the course of 10 years with Tower and familiar with the technology. But as I got into it, I had no idea how how intensive it would be in terms of an operating business. This is not a software as a service. This is more construction based. And even though I worked for a real estate development company, I certainly didn't have that kind of contracting experience, right? So I'm dealing with a completely different type of person. I'm hiring people that have skill sets that are so far outside of what I know, and yet I have to be able to evaluate that skill set well enough to know if I can hire this person to do the job that I know I don't know how to do, right? So those are some of the things, and I've made bad decisions, and we've had turnover, and I've made good decisions, and I have people that say, or I feel will be with us for a very long time, that have, kind of the ability to grow with us as a company. We're definitely at an inflection point, for sure. And those are the kinds of things today, I think, that make me excited and make me nervous, right? Because I was hiring somebody recently and I was having this discussion with him that if you look at business as like this is the playing field that you're on, so we could have stayed at this size, let's say, and been a very successful business and just been done, right? My partner and I were doing well, we're making money. There was no need necessarily to get to that next level, except that we want to get to the next level, right? Clients are leading us in other areas and we have to ask ourselves, do we want to follow? Do we want to go in that direction, or do we want to say, no, thank you, we're going to stay in this kind of in this comfort zone? So the answer is we want to get to the other side of the field. Okay, so I was here and now I'm in the middle. And in the middle is where all the mess happens, right?
Yeah.
So you've planned and you've gotten strategy, but now you're sort of looking around and you're thinking, okay, I still want to go this direction. Do I have all my team? Are we still flanked? Are we moving in the right direction? Do we need to change course? Are there obstructions that we didn't anticipate? It gets...
So where do you turn to get that information? In other words, if you need new skills, where do you find those skills? Is it team members? Because every entrepreneur, almost in any stage that they're in, finds themselves in the middle of the field. You know, when you're in the early stage, you might be defining your product. In a later stage, you're trying to figure out where to bring in capital. So there's a whole range of being in the middle of the field.
Yes.
And entrepreneurs are always trying to find out how to get to that next yard line, playing on that metaphor. What do you do to make sure that happens successfully?
First of all, finding people is the hardest part. Absolutely, I think the hardest part of what we do. We talk to other people in the industry. We talk to our folks and see who they know. Sometimes it's recruiters, right? I mean, it can be a variety of different sources. I think the most difficult thing in the place where I've seen the challenge is I'm having one discussion thinking I'm looking for a particular thing, and somebody comes in and says, yes, I have that skill set, and then they come in and actually they're not that person that gets me to the next level. And I feel this unbelievable responsibility. I have a really hard time getting rid of people, right? Because you can usually tell in 60 days, you can probably tell in the first 30 days, but 60 days if you want to get honest with yourself, and then, if you keep them past 90, it becomes a really bad business decision that just becomes a drag like on your overhead. Those to me are the most difficult decisions, and I feel responsible for that because I feel like I've made a choice, I've made a commitment to you, right? But in some way, when you hire somebody, it's like you're going in blind and just saying, well, we haven't dated, but we're gonna move in together and see how it works out, right? And it's really hard. Mostly it doesn't work out. Sometimes you get lucky.
Someone once said, a technique is hire slow, fire quick.
Yeah.
Is that something that you adhere to?
Yes. Although a lot of times I need to pull my business partner in if I have to fire quick. I'm less good at that part. I'm learning. It's part of business. It's I hate that part.
Yeah. For most people, I think that's the hardest one. Personally.
Yeah.
So outside of personnel challenges, and maybe that is the hardest, what's your biggest challenge, both personally as an entrepreneur, whether you're facing, and it could be now or just that you are confronted with in general?
I would say the biggest challenge is probably time, right? When people see successful businesses, I don't know if this is true, but it feels true that sometimes when people see successful businesses, like my family business, right? People say, well, it looks easy because it's already been done, right? I remember when my grandfather passed away and I was giving this speech about him, and I thought to myself, I had no idea how hard it was what he did because I had only seen the success. It was so far along by the time I had gotten there. But it's really hard work. It's hard work to have time for anything else, right? Yeah. I work 6 days a week. I work 12 hours a day. And I love it. And it feels great. And it doesn't feel like work. But I have family. I'm married, right? I have all of these other things. That to me is probably the hardest part. Just time-wise, emotionally, it takes a toll on other people. So you have to really be in a partnership, not just with your business partner, but with your family and your loved ones and all kinds of other people. That's, for me, I think the hardest part.
And in many ways, I think at time, it's everybody's trying to find that right balance. And having a partner that appreciates that and understands that has got to be really hard. I can only imagine an entrepreneur who's really getting torn between their business, which is a child, a spouse, whatever you call it.
That's right.
It's a commitment.
Exactly.
So what advice would you give for other aspiring or early stage entrepreneurs? And that can be what should they do, what should they not do, how they should see the world. You've had a lot of experience in different situations. What are some words of wisdom that others can follow?
I would say that one of the biggest lessons that I think I learned from my success now and my failures before is know the business that you're going into, right? Have a skill set that is defined, and then have a business inside of that skill set that is believable to the market, that gives you credibility, right? Why would somebody invest in you? If you went to the bank like we did and said, we'd like to have a line of credit, right? Do they say, good for you, or do they say, I understand the fundamentals of your practice, I've seen your history, and I believe that there's value in there, therefore I'm willing to make an investment. So I think when I was at the tower companies, and many times throughout life, young people would come through and they'd say, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be an entrepreneur, and I would say, that's great, or I want to work in sustainability. I don't know what that means, right? What does that mean to you? What's the business that you want to do? What's the skill set that you have? And so if you can define that in a way that is believable and marketable, I think you will be infinitely more successful, or at least have a higher potential for success.
Yeah, and your passion comes through. I mean, your excitement about the work that you do really shows. What is your personal mission? What would you like to see happen? Why have you gone into business and doing the things that you're doing?
I have, I guess, a big shadow. I have a big bear that sits on my shoulder. That bear is my grandfather. So
that's an inspiration.
I feel that I have something to prove, I guess, in some ways. So I feel that nipping at my heels. And I feel when I decided to leave the tower companies, which was a great company, an established business, I had developed a lot of credibility there, that for me, if I were going to make that decision, that it better be the right one, right? So I don't know if that's inspiring for people, but that's what motivates me. I feel that I want to be a success, that I want to leave a legacy that's mine. And I like the fact that I'm still in the real estate business. I love the fact that I've been able to combine sustainability and real estate and profitability in one kind of fantastic company. To me, that's like the trifecta of awesomeness. So
the trifecta of awesomeness. I love that.
So, if I can turn that into something and continue, I guess, to turn that into success. It is a success now, but I have much bigger plans. I think maybe that's one of the curses of being an entrepreneur is you don't sit so much in the moment. My grandfather used to tell me that all of business is this balance between fear and greed. Then you kind of try to sit in the middle of the seesaw somewhere. I think that's probably true, right? I have lofty aspirations, and I want to continue to push myself. I have, big plans.
And where are those plans taking you? In 10 years, what would that look like?
Well, that's a really good question. I think in 10 years, I don't know that I can think that far out. I would say in 5 years, I have a good 5-year plan. So we're moving into new markets, and I know that, if my business could be a $100 million business, I mean, that's the number that we talk about, right? So today we're a $10 million business, and we're in what I would call one market. We have, next year, we're moving into 8 different markets. And so I have a plan that each one of those would grow into 1 or 2 million, right? That we would be able to kind of translate the message of what we do in sustainability into each one of those. And that overall, we would be able to kind of take a look back and say, this is unbelievable, right? When I walk inside of a building, it used to be that I would look at the ground and I would think of property management. I'd see the dings on the walls. And now I look up. And everywhere I go, it drives me crazy when I see wasted money, right? It drives me nuts. It makes me kind of not a good person to talk to at a party, because all I want to do is say, can you believe they have these incandescents? Or we're at a restaurant and I'm thinking, they're paying 80% more than they need to. It drives me crazy. So if I could go and see, just like I've done with our real estate portfolio, I can look and see the buildings themselves. If I can go through a portfolio and see, I've really been able to make changes across the country that have translated into meaningful kind of changes for the future. I think for me that would be very satisfying.
That's beautiful. That's really nice. And changing the future is what a lot of entrepreneurs want to do. They want to see a different world. The program that we're on is Entrepreneurship and Innovation Exchange. And we've talked a lot about entrepreneurship and your beliefs about what you as an entrepreneur need to do to become successful. Talk about innovation for a few moments. New products, new ideas, where do they come from? You're in a business of lighting. Lighting's everywhere. I mean, it's not so new, but it is new at the same time because LED is coming around new. So how do you incorporate innovation? How do you share that innovation? I love the idea that you do it at parties while you're looking up with a drink in your hand. Sometimes that's how you spread innovation.
Right. That's a really interesting question because when I first got started in this business, I was looking on the product side. I actually had spent about 6 months touring different installations with a manufacturer. And I realized very quickly that I did not want to be on the product side of the business. In fact, when we were together and I was at the event at the Tower Building for Bethesda Green, at that point I was still with that manufacturer. I realized very quickly that technology was changing and that innovation was going to be a critical part of this movement, and that I was best served not on the technology side, but in taking a look holistically and evaluating those innovative technologies, being on the cutting edge, and then presenting that information to my clients. That was sort of the value proposition that I wanted to bring to them. So we are constantly meeting with new manufacturers. There are so many changes that are happening. I mean, lighting may sound boring, but this is very exciting for me. There was a fixture last year that was, GE came out with a fixture where it was 375 watts to replace 1,000 watts. Today it's 243. That's unbelievable, right? So being able to watch that technology, being able to implement that, to educate people about what's possible. I mean, I go in sometimes and I talk to people and I explain what's happening in the market and they think it's crazy. Like they have no idea that this is what's going on and that these are the choices that are available to them, right? So just being able to bring that opportunity to them, I think is a huge value proposition. So that feels innovative to me, even though I'm not creating or designing specific technologies. I am evaluating and finding those technologies and bringing them into the markets in ways that perhaps those developers might not be able to.
That's great. So my last question is, it's going to be hard because you said the trifecta of awesomeness. So do you have a favorite quote or saying that you like that really kind of articulates what you believe in, how you feel, what the world should look like, or any other act of inspiration?
I don't know if this is going to fit into what you're asking for, but I do have something that I tell myself all the time. And again, this comes from my grandfather, who once told me that when people show you who they are, you have to believe them. And that's really deep, like if you let yourself get into that, right? It's one of the hardest challenges in businesses or in life is you want somebody to be something other than they are. You want a situation to be different than what it is. And just being honest with kind of what's going on and where you are, I think can be enormously.
True to yourself. I think an entrepreneur, you have to be so committed that if you're not true to yourself, eventually it will show through.
Right.
Marnie, this has been great. This has been wonderful. Thank you very much for being with us today. And we look forward to further conversations. Good luck with all your business ventures.
Thank you. I appreciate it.